Good afternoon. My name is Mark Rowe, and I'm a member of the Squeezing Historical Society and archivist for the archives for the Historical Society, which are kept in the Halton Hills Public Library, Georgetown branch. And I'm here to talk to you today about something many people are interested in, and that's property history. So I have behind me the 1858 Tremaine map of Halton County, and it's interesting simply because the owners of every lot and concession in the whole of Halton County are listed in this map. So I'll just explain a little bit about how Halton came about. And of course, the first purchase of land from the Mississaugas was along the lakeshore. And this is the area that was settled the earliest. And in fact, there's a different survey of land south of this land, this line here. And then from here up, all of this was part of the second purchase from the Mississaugas in 1818. And the purchase is larger than this. It includes over here in Peel as well and further north. So since the townships in the south had been named to do with the Battle of Trafalgar, namely Trafalgar Township and Nelson, of course, Admiral Nelson, it was decided that the three back townships would use the native names for the rivers. And so the native names for the rivers were Nassagaweya, Squeezing, and Chinguacousy, which some of you will recognize is well used in the Brampton area. So that's why these townships are called by those names, because those are the actual original native names for the rivers. So once this land was surveyed, the purchase was 1818, and by 1819 the survey was done. The northern part of Squeezing Township was done by Charles Kennedy. And so the land had to be given out. So first of all, you got free land given to you if you had served in the War of 1812, or you were related to people who served in the War of 1812, and so you had military grants. So military grants were given out throughout the township. Also, lots were set aside for the support of the church, being the Anglican Church at the time, called clergy reserves. So those lots were reserved for the Anglican Church, so they could sell them as needed to raise funds to promote the Anglican religion. Even though in Ontario, Methodism, which is now called the United Church, was really the largest Christian denomination. So we have clergy reserves and we have military grants, and so people could apply to the government for land. So this land, I call it free. You just had to show up at the time, and they would have the lots that were available on a piece of paper, and you could draw the piece of paper, and it would give you the lot and concession number. So before you confirm that that's what you wanted, quite often you would do that in the spring, and then walk to a Squeezing from Toronto, which was called York in those days, and check it out to see if it was a good piece of land or not. You know, those are the early days when you had that luxury to do that. And then you could take the land. So when you took the land, you said, yes, I'll take that piece of land. So the government required duties, settlement duties. And when those duties were completed, then the Crown would grant you the land, and it would be yours and your family's forever. So the duties were, once they give you a piece of land, you had to chop down the trees for 5 acres of land. You had to chop down the trees on half of the road concession in front of your property. You had to build a log cabin, and you had to plant crops on the 5 acres. And they gave you a period of time in which to complete that. And then when you had completed it, you got someone like a justice of the peace or a senior member of the community, or 2 or 3 neighbors to write down and attest that you had done all these things. Then you could take your piece of paper and your 1 shilling fee and go walk all the way back to York, go to the registry office, and it was yours. And that was the date that it became into your family. But that can be confusing when you look at land records, because land records say that, this person received the land in 1828. But you're going, but my family said that they were here like right from the beginning, 1819. Well, that's because until they were ready to sell the land or to pass it on to the next generation, you didn't need to be registered. So they finally got around to it. And also, where are you getting a shilling from when all you're doing is farming? You got to have the farm going enough to make extra money. So sometimes it was years or decades until the land was registered, even though the people still lived there and it was in their name. So when you received the Crown grant, you would actually receive the piece of paper, and I'll show it to you. I'll just put on these gloves because we have this original deed in our archives here in Georgetown, and it is very fragile, and we don't want the oils from our hand on it, because these oils eventually break down paper. So here's one with the official seal on it. Sometimes these seals would have red wax on it, and it says Province of Upper Canada, and this is the grant for a piece of land. And it was all, as you can see, it's a pre-printed piece of paper, but then it's all written down where it is and who it belongs to. And so every settler received this original deed. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of them left. When you sold the land, you would most often get something like this. And this is very similar to deeds that we have to this day. And it would just break it down inside as to who owned it and the measurements of the property. The early part of the years before you actually got the Crown deed, the library has microfilm called township papers, and the township papers have each lot and concession on it, and the lot and concessions contained, they're filed by lot and concession, and they contain any letters or correspondence that the government received from the person who said they would take that piece of land. So one of the interesting ones was George Kennedy. So George Kennedy received his piece of land because he served in the War of 1812. And the time came up and he had not completed his settlement duties on time. So he wrote to the governor, and it's written in here, I'm sorry, but I can't complete my duties because I will complete them, but I need extra time to complete my duties because of my war injuries. And he was granted an extension. However, historically, we know that George Kennedy was a boy during the War of 1812. He was 14. He served, all right. He served helping to load cannon. And loading the cannon, he received a war injury of being deaf in the ear closest to the cannon. So, but the government didn't require to know what your war injury was, just that you had a war injury, so that's fine. You can have extra time. So, you know, these little stories, once you dig a little deeper, become very, very interesting. And then, of course, over time, you had lots which were not only required the things that I mentioned before, but also they were designated as mill seats. And if you got a mill seat, you were required to build a mill to serve the surrounding area. A sawmill, of course, would be first, and a flour mill or grist mill after that. And then you get communities growing up. And so perhaps you live in town and you want to find some information about your property. So the properties are divided up into lots in town. And unfortunately, every developer has their own set of lots. So let's just say if there was 10 developers in Georgetown, there are 10 lot 1s and 10 lot 2s, and so on and so forth. So this book that the library's prepared called Land Survey Map lets you look up the street that you live on, and it tells you who was the person who surveyed your land. What's the name of that survey? Let me just open this up. It's kind of hard with these gloves on. There we go. And then again, we have microfilm, and you can look up the lot number there. So for instance, this is the George Kennedy survey here. These are all George Kennedy surveys. And then there's a day-foot survey, and so on and so forth. So that kind of information is here to help you do your own digging and research. So one last thing, I'll just explain the way the township works. And that's our township, Esqueezing Township, which more or less is the town of Halton Hills today. So we start with the baseline, and the baseline is now called Steeles Avenue. And then every 5 lots, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, they put in what we call a side road. So there's one, every 5 lots there's a side road. So if you live here in Halton Hills, you know there's a 5 side road and a 10 side road and a 15 side road. That's why. However, because all these people were waiting in York for free land, the government hired 2 surveyors. So one started at the bottom and one started at the top. So up here we have lot 32. This is the 32 side road, or Churchill or Belmafad side road. And so he started at the top and he started at the bottom. And so they met at lot 17, and that was called the check line. Because what they did was check to make sure that their lines are straight. The lines are straight. So the check line, which in Georgetown is called Maple Avenue. So that's the check line, and it's lot 17. And so the side roads go 5, 10, 15, 17, and then 22, 27, and 32. So that's the way they're organized. And so there's 32 lots in each concession. So a concession starts here at this town line, and it ends at a line. So the first concession ends at the first line. And the 7th concession ends at the 7th line, which also has the name of Trafalgar Road. And 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th concession. And the 11th concession ends at the road we now call Winston Churchill Boulevard. So that's the way our township is organized. But it doesn't apply to every township in the province. Different configurations were used at different times. So I hope you found that interesting. Thank you.